Hello, everybody. We're so glad you could join us this Sunday morning, March 17th, 2019. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America, and we welcome you all today. And we will start with our morning prayer.
From page 15 of Christian Science versus Pantheism. May our Father, Mother God, who in times past have spread for us a table in the wilderness and in the midst of our enemies, establish us in the most holy faith, plant our feet firmly on truth, the rock of Christ, the substance of things hoped for, and fill us with the life and understanding of God and goodwill towards men. Mary Baker Eddy.
Beautiful, thank you. And then for miscellaneous writings, Mary Baker Eddy. We today in this classroom are enough to convert the world if we are of one mind, for then the whole world will feel the influence of this mind, as when the earth was without form, and mind spake, and form appeared. Okay, we'll start with our watch.
Okay, watch number 396. Watch that you realize each day that mortal man can never be depended upon. Could you depend on a puppet or a marionette, every moment of which is controlled by the whim of the operator? Mortal man is a puppet with a mind that is human in belief and that is controlled by the consolidation of universal thought. His consciousness is subject at all times to being invaded, changed, and influenced mesmerically without his knowledge or consent. His desires may be inflamed or quenched, his impulses altered or reversed, his conclusions shaped unconsciously, and prejudice, envy, and hatred may be induced in him. All the while he nurtures such suggestions as his own. His whole effort is to sell himself, not God, and yet his most intimate thoughts and desires cannot be depended upon until he has learned, through Christian Science, how to protect his thinking and to relinquish the human mind for the divine. End quote.
Any comments?
Yeah, I just think it's really, really important just to know this, because it's so, all of what it's basically saying is I mean, for me is, I think people tend to get wrapped up in whatever their relationship, or almost making another god out of something or someone, and just kind of letting you know, just like Jesus said about building your house on the sand, on changing beliefs that is never stable and can't be relied upon.
Thank you.
When I first came here and was learning that I needed to handle thought, I was wondering why I had to handle thoughts that I had never encountered, but that, the watching point says that mortal mind is a consolidation of universal thought. So it helps me to make more sense of that.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that out, because many people will say, well, such and such doesn't, I never think of that, or sometimes it happens to say, someone who was once Catholic, oh, I don't think about it anymore. Well, even if you weren't Catholic, it's a universal thought that's out there. That's why we handle Lent, because you will feel it. If you don't handle something, you can be handled by it, which is why the need for constant watching and working and praying, to always test and try the Spirit. And sometimes it's easy, too, to fall in, well, you think someone is particularly wise or smart or knowledgeable, so you turn to them for answers, well, this watching point makes it clear you're never be sure. If they are in the right mind, if they have sought their answers from wisdom, yes. But if not, what does Mrs. Eddy say about human opinions?
Worthless?
Valueless?
Doesn't mean anything.
Value. Human opinion is valueless. I love that. Isn't science and health? And often, too, when you're out to do something, especially you take this course to work for God, you will have a lot of people giving you their opinions as to why you shouldn't. Why Christian Science is a cult. And you're crazy to follow those crazy people, or whatever else they will tell you. And there are many things.
And they may not say it, but they may just think it.
I had someone tell me once that Christian Science never healed anything.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, they've been reading the wrong papers, listening to the wrong voice. But this is how error works. It starts a false belief. It gets a lot of people to believe it. And then it presents itself as a universal law.
Mortal law.
A mortal law. And if you don't handle it vigorously, you'll find yourself experiencing it. You'll wonder, well, I never thought that. How could I experience it? Well, that's why. We are in a warfare. That's why Mrs. Eddy says, you study Christian Science, you've enlisted in an army.
And it's why we are counseled by Mrs. Eddy to know, Christian Scientists, be a law unto yourself, that mental malpractice cannot harm you either when asleep or when awake. A law unto yourself. So all these other laws, mortal laws that mankind is so prolific in making, you are exempt from. But if you don't know this truth, you will come under all this other beliefs. So the need for constant work and watching, which is, one of our main thrusts in this church. It is why, because error is always eager to get a slip through if it can.
Well, and it is what Jesus required of his disciples. What I say unto you, I say unto all. Watch. And Mrs. Eddy required it in her household. Every day, several times a day. So it's not new.
It isn't. But it's, a lot of scientists don't do it, which is why the movement is, or haven't done it, where it is. So must be reinstated. Why we have our unity watches, why you are counseled to do a daily watch every day. That we're not just saying this for our own benefit, for everyone's benefit and the benefit of the world, and certainly the cause of science. So
I hear that. I'm sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
No, I've heard other groups and other churches also do watches. I'm not sure in what nature, but there are others who are doing watches too. I hope it's, if it's the same. I'm sure it's the same, maybe watching against the things that are happening and so on. So, one effort.
Yeah, if it's a...
And that's a good sign, isn't it? Yeah, it's naturally a Christian thing to recognize you need to watch. Whatever your understanding of God is, be it good or, or better or whatever, what little you know of the truth, you can apply to the world's problems. When you do, it's a great power. So we unite with all Christians, true Christians, in watching for our world.
Thank you all. Okay, the subject today is substance. Golden text, Psalms 85. Yea, the Lord shall give that which is good, and our land shall yield her increase. But this within itself is a good watch. And to know that it is God that gives the increase. So today we're to learn a better sense of substance, what that means, what substance means, what supply means. So, anyone want to speak on that? What substance means to you?
I like what you said on your post. I work with it. I am all there is to thee. I am that I am.
I am that I am. It's in this week's lesson. And it does relate. That is substance, is spirit, and it is all. You know it's all that there is to you. Then any of these false beliefs that you have entertained will fall off. They will fall away. They will have no power. It's like something being demagnetized. Can't attach itself. Falls away. But you have to know the truth, the understanding. You want to say?
This whole idea of substance, people are enamored with effect and don't give proper consideration to cause. There's a cause and effect thing. And it's pretty clear here in our responsive reading. It says, receive instruction, not silver. Knowledge rather than choice gold. In other words, there's some things to be put first. That's the cause of all things, which is God. And then, once that's set, you can let God fill your life with whatever it is He needs to use you to fulfill His purpose. And it'll be abundant.
Thank you. Yes. Start with the Father.
And I would also say, sorry.
No. That's good. Just reemphasize, so much of what we're indoctrinated to think is that substance is the physical things that we have, or the bank accounts that we have, or the job that we have, or whatever. It's thrown at us every day that is our substance, quote. But as Bruce said, that's all the effect. And it can vanish in a moment. What is a real substance, and the substance behind all of that effect, is wisdom, knowledge, truth, love. Those are the things that are the cause of everything that we have.
And that is what you are to seek after. You seek after that. The others follow. Everything follows. I was thinking today about Mrs. Eddy. Well, she gave up everything, didn't she, to discover this science. She went from boarding house to boarding house. Who knows how little money she had? Sometimes nothing. Yet she was sustained by the Father. But she was motivated by an unselfish purpose. And in that unselfish purpose, eventually, it became great wealth to her. But that wasn't what was important to her. It was God that was important to her. And she remained faithful to Him, to working for Him throughout her years. As Florence always talks about her little bedroom in Chestnut Hill, so modest. It wasn't grandiose. That's not what was important. So, Carol, would you read the responsive reading?
Does not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? Receive my instructions, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures.
Thank you. So, Bruce said, Gary said, you're seeking God, His wisdom. I mean, if you seek His wisdom, don't you think He will tell you what you need to do about your business? Don't you think He will direct your path and make it plain? Whatever that business may be. But are you seeking that wisdom with all your heart and mind and soul and putting Him first in your life? Or is your business first in your life? Your business is first and you have no time spent with communing with God, well, things are upside down. Got to be God. And this responsive reading, this is a beautiful lesson written by Fairley. In the lesson, the last, the Bible, the last citation, Lillian.
Matthew 6.
Just number 33.
Oh, the last page. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you.
Thank you. This is a Sermon on the Mount. What Ray wrote about on her post, what Mrs. Eddy said about how important the Sermon on the Mount is. You could read it every day. We could have it given as a sermon every week in our church, and it would be amazing. And people are saying, well, what should I do about my clothes? What should I do about this and that? And just look at the lilies, how they grow. And are they? It was Solomon himself arrayed as beautifully as they are. It took a long time before I understood this about seeking the kingdom of God and His righteousness first, and everything else being added. But I cannot emphasize it enough, because it's so easy to slip into the other. This is where you get into New Age, which is the danger of New Age. Start seeking those things and, quote, visualizing those things. And
start with effect instead of cause.
And then you find that they manipulate you rather than you obeying God.
yes,
And you'll deny that you're being manipulated.
The effect can go away, but if you have the value behind effect, God, that never leaves. So you're not afraid of losing something because you have what's important there, the main part of what you have, the value of it.
You will always have what you need.
Yes.
Even if you lose everything, you will always have what you need, and if you need to go and rebuild, then you can.
just as in Job's case.
And even if you don't lose it, even if you seek effect surreptitiously and get it and keep it, you will never, ever be satisfied with it. It will haunt you. It will be a liability to you because it was all built on the sand.
And you will always be afraid of losing it.
You will always,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That is a huge point. You will always be afraid of losing it. But when it comes from and through God, there's a sense of peace about it. You will also, you'll take care of it. You won't abuse it. And you'll know, truly, it's not yours. It belongs to God. And it's a whole different feel about everything. It is
I am sorry.
important. Go ahead, Michael.
No, I just speaking of the human mind. I remember I heard about some business book that was selling at some point, but it was called "Only the Paranoid Survive," and it was sort of it only right. It kind of encapsulates what you're talking about. How, humanly speaking, you're always worried about sort of who's out to get you and what are you going to do and how are you going to counter that. And it's not a very fun way to live, as probably most people here know from experience. And I like the opposite is true. What you're saying about the Sermon on the Mount and what Jesus was talking about, and how to not pursue that and make that your God, basically. And just one more thing about I would understand Mrs. Eddy, when she was finishing Science and Health, was kicked out of the place she was staying in at that time, and she didn't get discouraged, despite the fact that something really good had happened, but there was still this claim of poverty or lack, and obviously her consciousness changed, everything changed, and it's kind of an example for everyone.
Yeah, because her motive was love of God and of mankind, and that was her motive, so she couldn't be shaken from it. It wasn't to get wealthy. It wasn't for herself.
And even as a child, it was shown her love of God and mankind, because when she was like 12 years old, she couldn't accept the law of predestination. She couldn't think that everyone wouldn't be saved. Her love for all mankind, and she was accepted in the church, and she didn't have to accept that.
A congregational church.
Yes.
Yeah, it's everything that motivated her. So, and in this week's lesson, we have these two examples, different examples of supply. The widow woman, who had pretty much lost everything and was willing to give the little bits that she had to a complete stranger, whom, sure, due to her spiritual sense, she trusted. And when she did, her supply
Did not leave her.
Did not leave her, no. Then Hazai, who had a wonderful opportunity to learn from Elisha, was a great prophet, and who would not take anything from Nahum, knowing that he compromised himself with idols in order to keep his job. But he didn't follow that example. He just wanted more. He ended up a leper. So whether you see the effects of this wrong type of seeking something other than God, your source, whether you see it right away or not, what does the Bible say? What does Proverbs say? Psalms. They seem to flourish.
Like a spring day tree.
Like a spring
Their
day.
end is. I don't remember the
Thank you. Yeah, their end is not good.
Go into the sanctuary of God, you can see their end.
Thank you. Yeah. So never be impressed. It was also brought out, we had a wonderful Bible study, thank you, Thomas, yesterday, that this idea of coveting, when it all starts, people start to covet and want what they perceive they think someone else has. Because you never know what they have or what they don't have. It's just your green, jealous eyes in operation. And then they end up doing things that are not right, disloyal to God, disobeying His commandments. And that is why it was so wise for one of the commandments, thou shalt not covet. The list of the people who came to ruin in the Bible because coveting is quite long, actually. And Gehazi is one of them.
Very long.
Yeah.
Very long list.
Well, and also the list of those who ended up prospering because they obeyed God no matter what, no matter how hard the situation or the circumstances, and then ended up prospering is also very long. And this is why, this is the importance of the Bible and reading it and studying it, and that beautiful quote. If you didn't listen to, or you were not here yesterday, do listen to the Bible study. Quote said, Mrs. Eddy says, we need to study the Bible daily and to understand its promises. It fills you with a peace and also a power because it's God speaking to us, His Word. Anyone else on any of this?
I wanted to just mention, too, about the idea of coveting qualities instead of stuff, and which is just as bad as thinking that you don't have it and instead of claiming it for yourself and being grateful that someone else is already evidencing it, I guess.
That's right. Absolutely true. Thank you. Yes.
No, that's
equally
very true.
As bad, very, or more so even.
That's the competition then.
Right. When you think someone has got qualities that you don't have and you look to them for something, you are making a god out of them. You are putting them in a position that is unfair for them and for you.
When we realize that God gives us everything that we need, there's nothing to covet.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why she gave us the scientific statement of being. There is no life, truth, intelligence, or substance in matter. Everything we need, our health, money, everything is in God. So we all have it. In truth, we all have it. So why covet another's? It's yours too right now.
Thank you. It is a sign that you're in the wrong mind, the negative human mind. It's also, we've talked about it before, it shows it's a laziness. The mortal mind is lazy. It would rather covet what someone else has than to work on its own vineyard, so to speak. While you're coveting what someone else has, you could be making your own little plot of land more beautiful, more productive, by knowing the truth about it, by working with these truths. Please don't covet. As the British would say, a bloody waste of time. worse than a bloody waste of time.
One of the things that was so helpful to me was this beautiful statement that's in the lesson about let your conversation be without covetousness, and then the assurance that, for I will never leave thee nor forsake thee.
Thank you. That's true. Not even to have it in your conversation or in your thought. Be grateful. If people have truly demonstrated something good, that's something to rejoice in. Because if they've done it for you, or excuse me, if God has done it for you, He can certainly do it. Or if God has done it for someone else, He can certainly do it for you. Finally got it right. So.
That's why we rejoice in another's good.
And there's so much good that sometimes I ask myself,
am I truly grateful for all the good I've already received? And I'm just overwhelmed with how much good has come into my life. And I mean, you don't even have a moment to covet if your thought is already filled with gratitude for the good that is so infinite. If you sat down to make a list, it would be very, very long. So gratitude, too, kind of wipes away all those anxious feelings like you might not have something, but we have everything.
Thank you, Suzanne.
We do, and when we have more than we need, it's because why is that? God gives us more than we need.
We can give to others.
For what He wants you to do with it.
Yes, that means there's something that you can give to somebody. Help them.
And that only happens when you have proved yourself faithful so that He can trust you. It has to be, there has to be trust. I'm saying this in human terms because, of course, it's not like God sits on His throne and decides to trust you. But it's the laws of the universe in operation. And we talked about yesterday all the tests that Elisha went through before he was given the double spirit. He had to be tested many times, and he proved himself faithful. And sweetheart, you cannot fake this. Don't even think about it. It won't work. Try to fake it. It has to be something deep within your soul that motivates you. A love for God and man. And you can get thrown to the other parts of the earth and you're still faithful. God, but if I make my bed in hell, behold, I am there. God is there. When you've been tossed around enough, then He will trust you and your reward comes. Look at Jeremy. He was tossed everywhere, weren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm certain I had no place, which is I was very grateful that my practitioner ended up sending me a place to begin with in that first sentence, which was pretty much the only thing that made sense when I read it. Helped me to see it. Good place.
That verse that I was talking about, I'm sorry, it wasn't in the lesson. It was in the Bible study, one of the things that we were supposed to read.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wondered. Thank you for correcting that. Yes. And, Suzanne gave a testimony once about rejoicing in another's good. And, I've noticed with Suzanne where she makes friends wherever she goes. And that is part of the reason, because she truly can do that. How can you have a friend? Think about it. If when you're with them and you share them, something really great happened, and their eyes turn green and start swirling around, and why did you get it, and why don't I have it, and all that kind of thing. Kind of hard to be friends with that, right? But if you have this spirit of love and rejoicing in another's good, truly, then the doors of friendship are open. And you do it for them, they do it for you, but it's based on this principle that, wow, that's great, and yeah, isn't that wonderful? And you'll have what you need. No reason to be jealous or to compete. That's another thing. I think there's a movie I never saw, but it's called Mean Girls or something. Yeah. Anyway, Mean Girls. Yeah, so, okay, they all want the same boy, and let's just cut each other's throat for it. Well, isn't that a lovely picture? And isn't that boy just going to be so happy with that B-I-T-C-A? So, let's look at this clearly, and God, teach your children this. As I said yesterday, this college scam is such a beautiful illustration of this sham of wanting what another has, deceitfully trying to get it, and eventually coming to ruin. Because there's only one word for that. It will ruin. It will ruin everything. It already has. It already has. Maybe you didn't know it yet, but it has. Because it's godless.
Here's the saying that the hand that is open to give is open to receive. So if your hand is open to give love and everything, it's going to come back.
Yes, it is. It is.
I just want to say, as far as coveting things, I think of Gilbert Carpenter says that we shouldn't even cherish a desire to be healed until we're ready.
Thank you. That's a beautiful point. Until you're ready for it. Until you've been through the fire enough that you're ready to drop all these, the pride, the hate, the resentment, all of these things that might have been motivating you, till you're ready to really let go of all that. Become ready. And so much to talk about. But Gary found in Miscellany, and we have it now on the website. He read it for us yesterday, this article Mrs. Eddy wrote called Charity and Invalids, and how she had to stop giving. It mentions invalids, but I thought the point of invalids, because she was an invalid once. She called herself an invalid, and yet she was healed of it. But invalid is a state of thought that just, it doesn't really want to be healed. It has to go through the churning process some more. And it can be a physical thing. It can be money, supply. The person that always wants to be given to, always wants to be waited on, and just it goes on and on and on. And that person would take the oil of a person who is truly working, and also take the time of a person who is truly working, that they could spend on someone else who is ready for the blessing and ready to be healed. And they're all states and stages of consciousness. And this is why, it's a very important article, I'm so glad Gary found it, why we don't just give foolishly.
To anybody that asks, just because they ask.
I was thinking
including
about
the government.
I was thinking about Mrs. Eddy saying that. I'm sure some people would read the article and think, oh, that's awful. But she spent 40 years creating this whole system where there were practitioners in every city, and her books were out there. All this stuff was to help people, and she must have gotten to the point being like, I've given,
yes. Yes, I know Florence and I will get questions and questions and questions. It's like, have you read Science and Health? Read it, please, because otherwise, I could spend hours talking to you about this, but I have other people to help. Read it for yourself. Study it. Prose work. She has answered everything. It's a complete science. If you have legitimate needs and if you're ready to be healed, absolutely you should call a practitioner and have no reluctance in doing it. And a lot of it in our church is when you're ready to give to the church. When you are ready to give, because then you come under a line of fire that you wouldn't already necessarily have. And you need that support. But these are things we've been taught through 40 years of boot camp in Christian Science.
This whole idea.
Mrs. Eddy, sorry.
I was just going to say, this whole idea of giving where it should not have been given. In modern language, it's called enabling the error. I think God created man, but he did not create man dependent upon other men or women, but rather to depend on God himself. So if you give, you're enabling this weakness of depending on others to simply give to you.
You give unwisely.
Give unwisely.
Yeah.
Keeps you an invalid, that's all.
Yes. On the other hand, if someone truly in need, you will go the extra mile. You will never desert them. You go and go and go and go. But also, each one is individually should be responsible. And that's why when the government gets where they're telling you over and over and how to spend your money, and taxation, and then you have a revolution because it's not right. It's just not right. Who was that quoted? Somebody saying, well, when you do that, it's eventually you're going to run out of somebody else's money. Yeah. I think it was Margaret Thatcher. Anyway, whatever. It's not right, and it goes under the name of right and do-goody. And this is where we have to be careful. And
you have to just use our gift of discernment, because there are so many nonprofits clamoring for money, and the season of giving in December, you just get bombarded. But, I've heard stories of, like, Christmas baskets given to children, and year after year, the same 4 children are given, the same families are given the baskets, and I'm one of the people running it said so many children, I mean, not all of them, but they don't even express joy. It's like they've become entitled. So that's, they're given the stuff, and then they're like, oh, yeah, this is what I get every year. So it's not doing what it was intended to do.
Thank you.
And then also, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just Mrs. Eddy, I understand, wasn't too keen on people like giving away signs and how it was sold, and she expected it to be sold and people to pay for it. And so, I mean, it's sort of talking about what you said, where it's like, don't throw pearls before swine, like don't just give this to anyone and say, here, because there isn't an appreciation. No one has paid a price, and paying the price is part of learning and part of, having access. So, even with Plainfield's website, I mean, you have to actually make the effort to find it and learn about it. And even then, only those that we're going to take the time to learn about it are going to benefit from it. Nothing's free.
Yes.
Well, at least now it's out there in the world, and those who are truly seeking will find it. And when they find it, if their heart is right and they want to go the mile, to walk the walk, then they stay. So I think it's a great way to give it in the world without personally handing it to anybody, just anybody.
Thank you very much. We prayed carefully about it, and I think if the movement had done more what they should, this wouldn't be necessary. But right now, we want to get it out to as many people as easily to the 4 corners of the earth. Someone called me just this week saying he wanted a subscription to our full text lesson. He just found our church, but he said that the organization, the full text lesson, a year for the full text lesson is like half his Social Security, or I couldn't afford it. It's over $100. Now that isn't, I can't see that as being right. But anyway, so we get it out there, and you can pay for it if you want it in paper form, or you can download it, or whatever, but it is there. You're right, you have to seek it and find it, and then you've got to work it in order to be blessed by it. So you see, it goes both ways. Jesus went around freely giving, and yet at the same time,
but he didn't heal everybody.
He didn't. We have the story of the virgins who, when everybody wanted their oil, they refused. They said, you have to go get your own. So, thank you all. It is a matter of your spiritual sense. But either way, if it goes either way, where you're not giving anybody anything because you're hoarding it, or if you go overboard and just give everybody everything, they're not demonstrations.
I think the organizations that give to help someone go and make their own, those are, I feel they're divinely directed, because it's not given to keep someone wanting from you. It's given to really help someone go and do for themselves. And there are a few that I know of that are doing that too. So,
thank you. Very important to use the discretion of who you give, and you can rest assured when your money comes to our church, Bruce.
It's used wisely.
It's used wisely. So wisely that several people look and review before and approve before the money goes out for any purpose.
Yeah.
So that there's no room for misappropriation.
No, absolutely not.
And they're all demonstrated purposes that it's used for.
Yes.
It's all going to God and making sure it's the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that if you give to any charity, it's important that that's true, just as Suzanne says, because you're right, you can be bombarded with all of these things. You give to one charity and then you get 20 others money. So in our book, other than science, we have in collected writings a wonderful article, Finance. I think that might be on the carousel now. Anyway, it's wonderful, by Bicknell Young. And then in Martha Wilcox, she did one on business and also a couple on supply. Her first one on supply, she says, some years ago, a Christian Science lecturer made this startling statement from the platform: it is a sin to be poor. Shortly after this, a prominent Christian scientist said to me, there is no sense in so much lack among scientists when they know what they know about the science of supply. And again, another Christian scientist whose experience and quality of thought was much above the average made this pointed declaration: insufficient supply is a disease as much so as insufficient health. Now, she said that, and this too, these statements challenged my orthodox way of thinking. Unconsciously, like many others, I was holding to the old belief that deprivation of wealth often developed worthy traits of character. She goes on, well, there's some truth to that, but it's an interesting point. And again, it has to be taken in the right sense of seeking God first and his righteousness, seeking the kingdom of God first. But if you're holding on to this old belief, it could be holding back your good. So you don't think you're worthy, that God doesn't want it. And I don't know any of us, perhaps, who have been taught otherwise in childhood. I mean, we always lived very frugally. I know Gary did. And that was not a bad thing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But don't let it get into your thinking so you're not accepting the good that God does have for you. Open your thought up to it. Otherwise, you'll never get it.
And remember, you are his image and likeness, and he loves you. So if you have everything that you need, and you're grateful to God for it, that is how life is supposed to be lived. If you don't have everything you need, and you somehow think that that's a righteous way to live, well, that's a self-righteous way to live. It's not a God-righteous way to live. So there's something wrong, and it can be healed. It can be healed by knowing God better.
Sharon, what is the little prayer you keep in your purse?
Just as lack of health can be healed by knowing God better.
The sense of all of it is in God, so.
Exactly.
It says, love is all-powerful. Love is all-seeing. Love is ever-present. Thy kingdom has come. Thy will is done here on earth as it is in heaven, and earth is heaven.
And it's in the blue book.
Mrs. Eddy told her students to put this prayer, in their pocketbook, and if they did, they would never want. And it worked.
It worked, because Sharon has never wanted. And many of us here, came perhaps wanting or without things that we needed, not that we wanted. And in applying these rules and things we talked about today, I call them the biblical rules of finance, our situations changed to one of proper supply. Gary said it's just goes hand in hand with health. I didn't know this before I came to this church. I thought, well, just Christian Science, you just used it on your physical problems. It covers everything. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. All things.
Such a wrong way of thinking. Now that I look back, it's as if God would withhold health or some good from us. It doesn't make sense at all.
That's so true. Yes, it doesn't make sense. A good God. And our God is an abundant God. Mrs. Evans used to love to tell the story about the man, that was praying because he didn't have a car. He was praying and praying for a Volkswagen. And he got a Volkswagen. And then God said to him, when he thanked God for the Volkswagen, he said, well, you're welcome, but I would have given you a Cadillac. So, anyway, her point was, if you go to the well with the thimble,
a thimble, you get a thimbleful. You go to the well with a big pail, you'll get a big pail, bucket full.
So, we have an abundant God, and as we serve Him and put all that aside and realize any of the things are just byproducts of serving Him, and the reason to have anything is to give back, to bless others, whether it's your home or your car or whatever, it's to bless others with, then it multiplies. It's like the loaves and the fishes. And He started with the loaves and the fishes. You always start giving gratitude that you already have it. That's another article by Big Young. If you say, I want, then you're already admitting you don't have. No, you do have, because you're a reflection of God's child. We're going to end with a poem that Parthen gave us, The Touch of the Master's Hand. And Parthen recently has sent us some noteworthy news. We have some new noteworthy news. One which the gangs in El Salvador prison, some evangelists, I'm sure, Christians went in, and they're being healed, changed, their lives transformed. Another about a head member of ISIS who, I think it was through a dream, found out about Christianity, said he never knew this religion of love. That changed him. Transformation. This is what's happening as the Christianity spreads, healing perhaps what would be considered we have time.
Okay. The touch of the master's hand. 'Twas battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it scarcely worth his while to waste much time on the old violin, but held it up with a smile. What am I bidding, good folks, he cried. Who'll start the bidding for me? $1, $1. Then two, only two. $2, and who'll make it $3? $3 once, $3 twice, going for $3. But no. From the room, far back, a gray-haired man came forward and picked up the bow. Then wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening the loosened strings, he played a melody pure and sweet as the caroling angel sings. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, What am I bid for the old violin? And he held it up with the bow. $1,000, and who'll make it $2? $2,000, and who'll make it $3? $3,000 once, $3,000 twice, and going and gone, said he. The people cheered, but some of them cried, We do not quite understand. What changed its worth? Swift came the reply, The touch of the master's hand. And many a man with life out of tune and battered and scarred with sin is auctioned cheap to the thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He is going once and going twice. He's going and almost gone. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of a soul and the change that is wrought by the touch of the master's hand.
That's beautiful.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.